You hear that good voice, Miss Lou? You may want to produce me. I ain't lying. I might be ready one of these days. Ain't no stopping now. You can't do the video, though. My dancing thing is not working. This is Empire Talks Back. I'm Wallace Allen here on the case for truth, justice, with the right information to help improve the situation. Empire Talks Back is brought to you by the Improve Association, where we are promoting business and community partnerships. Brought to you by West Side Story Newspaper, WSSnews.com. Today's special programming is brought to you by the California Black Media Stop the Hate Project in conjunction with the California Civil Rights Department. People can report a hate incident or a hate crime by calling 833-866-4283. Notice I said a hate incident or a hate crime. You can make that call 833-866-4283, Monday to Friday from 9 to 6 p.m. Now, outside of those hours, you can leave a message or you can call 211 to report a hate incident or hate crime. Hate incident? Probably don't know what that is, do you? Hate crime? You've heard about them. We're going to talk about those today. This is the Think Factory. Today's thought. For many states, September represents International Underground Railroad Month. In 2019, the state of Maryland proclaimed September as International Underground Railroad Month. In 2020, the states Maryland and Michigan were trailblazers in the effort to include more states in this celebration. Working with the National Park Service's National Underground Railroad Network to Freedom to connect with verified Underground Railroad sites, facilities, and programs from across the United States. September was chosen to represent International Underground Railroad Month because it was the month that two of the most well-known freedom seekers, freedom fighters, and Underground Railroad operatives, Frederick Douglass and Harriet Tubman, escaped from slavery. When Harriet Tubman was a conductor on the Underground Railroad, there was no such thing as a hate crime. Let me say that again. When Harriet Tubman was a conductor on the Underground Railroad, there was no such thing as a hate crime. It was a crime to not hate. No, you couldn't teach black folk to read. You had to justify their less than human status. And when I say that, we say, well, you know, sometimes they treated us like we weren't human, less than human. No, they treated you worse than that because their dogs are less than human and they fed them good food. They took care of them like, you know, they do. Hate was a requirement. Helping Harriet was a crime. Now, America has come a long way because of people who have refused to hate. Hate causes trauma and stress, though in different forms, to both the hater and the hated. Mental devastation, mentally destabilizing. How do we stop the hater's favorite habit? It's a slow process, and it is a process. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, I'm going to introduce you to this morning's guest. We have two dynamic men who will help speak on the subject of erasing hate. But at this point, we'll just take that break. This is Empire Talks Back. I'm Wallace Allen. We'll be right back.
Publish your legal notice in West Side Story newspaper. For the best service and the best rates, call 909-384-8131. Publishing legal notices in the city and county of San Bernardino since 1990. West Side Story provides friendly expert service. Call 909-384-8131 to benefit from budget-friendly rates. Whether a fictitious business name, a name change, a divorce summons, or any other legal or public notice, call Westside Story Newspaper 909-384-8131. 909-384-8131.
Join the Riverside Chamber of Commerce, the Riverside County Black Chamber of Commerce. Enjoy the many benefits of membership designed to support and accelerate your business. Make valuable contact with other professionals, expanding your resources and customers. Update your learning experience via their Chamber's low and no cost seminars and workshops. Improve your social media impact. The Chamber is dedicated to supporting your unique business needs. Take your first step to the next level. Call the Riverside County Black Chamber of Commerce, 951-823-0175. That's 951-823-0175. 951-823-0175. Reserved November 18th. Save that date because on November 18th at the Knights of Columbus Hall, the Route 66 Jazz Soiree featuring Billboard's smooth jazz top artist, the IE's own Mo Lewis. You don't want to miss that show. You'll hear more about it. Just stay tuned. Matter of fact, you'll get to hear some of his music a little bit later. Today's guest, my good friend, Mr. Mac Rome, the Renaissance man.
All right, what's up?
Shares his evolving intellect via performing arts with a focus on comedy. But his lane is the 4-lane highway, and whatever lane he gets on is a good one. Mac, how you doing this morning?
I'm doing great, brother. How are you this morning?
God is great, and I'm extremely grateful. I'd like to also introduce Mr. Michael Harris, an activist, social manipulator, a lie detector, deal maker, a shaman. Resident of Sacramento, California, has probably spoken to your state reps more often than you have. Michael, how are you this morning?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good for a blessed Sunday morning.
Well, blessed Sunday morning. Have you been preaching this morning? Did you hold services? Did you collect your tithes? What's going on?
No, I just been talking to my plants, watering them, feeding them a little bit.
Oh, yeah, you're collecting your tithes. You're gathering your good feelings from the result of the work that you've been doing. So that's what you do. I appreciate meeting you the other day in Sacramento. I appreciate even more the people that you introduced me to. Michael, meet Mac. Michael and Mac. Guys, you heard my introduction. Just think about the concept here. During the movement, the Underground Railroad, we all speak to the heroism of people like Frederick Douglass and certainly Harriet Tubman. But they had associates. They had people who held those little hidden spots where they could stop along the way from the south of the southern part of America as they headed to Canada. We say the North Star. Many people think that they, just wanted to get to north of the Mason-Dixon line. The goal was Canada. The idea still is that it was against the law to help anybody that was going to be helping black folk. It was a hate crime to not hate. Let me get you to respond just to that concept. Mac.
Okay. I'd love to respond to that. First, I want to lay it down a little bit of a context about race relations in America. Back when America was colonies, we had indentured servants come over along with slaves that were shipped over from Africa. During the early 1800s, the indentured servants and the slaves were treated the exact same way. At about 1675, a man named Bacon had a rebellion in Virginia. He took over the Virginia colony from England for about a year. After Bacon's rebellion, the colonies decided to divide the labor class by races. Over the next 50 years, they passed legislation and litigated the white American into existence. They also, during this time, made slavery hereditary for black Americans. So this is where we get the beginning of race relations in America, because Bacon's Rebellion was 100 years before the Declaration of Independence. So even when America was conceived as a nation, it was already normal and regular to abuse black Americans in this country. It had been legal and litigated for the previous 100 years before the Declaration of Independence. So I was so happy we brought this topic up today, because I agree that, I've got some statistics we're going to go over later on today, but it is almost, once we talk about the numbers and everything, it's almost like the physical abuse and violence against the black American has become so normal and accepted, not just by white America, but by black Americans too.
You know, as you make that statement, I'd like for Michael, who pointed out to me his view on reparations, his view on how many of us speak back to the time of our great grandparents and grandparents and the evils that were done to them as our rationale for receiving reparations. Michael thinks that, that may be idealistic. It also may be a reflection of our escapism, of not realizing that racism and the effects of hate and racism are not lingering echoes, but they are normal daily announcements. Michael, why would a person, a black person today, be wise to both satisfy his stress relief potential and his real access to reparations by being more recent in terms of his concept of racism and how it has stressed us out now? Could you describe some of those things that you were talking to me about the other day?
Yeah, I'm excited for the dialogue and the ongoing deeper conversations. So for me, there's an individual reparations, there is your family, then there's the community, and then there's the broader everybody. But when you start talking about trauma and stress from hate, it plays out in different ways. I think Dr. Joy DeGury sums it up the best. The post-traumatic slave syndrome that comes out in different ways. But the idea that, people that don't even recognize that these things are happening to us are going to somehow quantify that, regurgitate 1,000 pages in a reparations report, and then actually come with some legislation magically in 2024 in California, and then at some point at the federal level. I just don't see that as a good use of the lawyers need to do that, but a lot of people can't. You're not going to be able to have a good outcome, comprehensive outcome in a short period of time. So if you go back to the caste systems in India, where race is even first on the scene, based upon your skin color, the caste system, and then you go to the Iberian Peninsula, Spain and Portugal, getting the blessing from the papacy in 1442 to begin the transatlantic slave trade, based upon race and the perception that they may get involved in this religious war that,
Well, now the
Catholic Church is dealing with
Michael.
With Muslims.
Excuse
but
me.
the idea, so it's based upon.
Michael, I want to break in. Yeah, you just inspired me there when you brought up the Pope's blessing of slavery. He didn't just bless the idea of slavery; he also ultimately blessed the idea of hate.
Yes.
In the sense that we can't treat people the way they're treated. We'd have to treat something less than people. and we would have to treat something less than our pets, something that we consider less than our pets, in order to separate families and rip babies out of stomachs and carry people across the ocean and throw them off the boat if they didn't succumb to the pressures there. Michael, one of the things that I'd like to get you to point out is that the stress that we see today is really the hate incident. You know, the difference between the hate incident and the hate crime. Our history certainly has, I guess, dulled us and numbed us to the smaller aspects of it. The importance of the little things, I think, is brought out by our concept or our memory of Bill Bratton, Chief Police of New York, who decided to affect a policy that says we're going to go with the broken window. We're not going to wait for you to break in the door. We're going to we're going to go with the little things. We find that in terms of California's hate program and policy, that our Asian community, a couple of years ago with this started with the COVID, certainly started longer than that, earlier than that, but with the COVID and people pointing at China and saying that that was the cause, well, you know, we all look alike. Asians certainly had the problem then of responding to being the people who were blamed for the COVID and were brought into a whole new realm of terror, insults, spitting, beaten up. We didn't have anybody drugged behind cars and hung, but we certainly had incidents well beyond the level of crimes. But they spoke up on the incidents. They spoke up on the inconvenience and the high level of stress and trauma that was being brought to their community immediately. California came up with millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars, to help fight that, and I think that's a wonderful model for the rest of our hate victims to follow, and evidently California does too, because now we're saying report the hate incident. Now, when we come back, let's kind of give people an idea of what is the difference between an incident and a hate crime. If it's not against the law, what is it against? Is it against humanity? Is it against morality? Is it against ethics? What is a hate incident? We'll talk about it right after this break. This is Empire Talks Back. I'm Wallace Allen. My guest, Michael Harris of Sacramento, Mac Rome of the world. We'll be right back.
We've got the groove. There's been so many.
Publish your legal notice in West Side Story newspaper. For the best service and the best rates, call 909-384-8131. Publishing legal notices in the city and county of San Bernardino since 1990. West Side Story provides friendly expert service. Call 909-384-8131 to benefit from budget-friendly rates. Whether a fictitious business name, a name change, a divorce summons, or any other legal or public notice, call West Side Story newspaper 909-384-8131. 909-384-8131. That's 909-384-8131.
Today's program is brought to you by the California Black Media Stop the Hate Project in conjunction with the California Civil Rights Department. People can report a hate incident by calling 833-866-4283 Monday through Friday from 9 to 6 p.m. Outside of those hours, you can call and leave a voicemail or call 211 to report a hate incident. This is Empire Talks Back. I'm Wallace Allen with my good friend here, Mac Rome, and my good new friend, Michael Harris, calling in from Sacramento. Okay, guys, what do you think is a hate incident?
Can I interject in here real quick? And I just want to read some statistics before we further the conversation along. Basically, the Department of Justice did a study in 2020, and that study was on hate crimes. And basically, what they're saying is that hate crimes have increased for all races, 32% from the previous year, 2019. Now, anti-black or African-American hate crimes continue to be the largest bias incident victim category, with 2,871 incidents in 2020. That's a 49% increase since 2019. So we see the trend is that it's increasing. Additionally, there were 279 Asian incidents reported in 2020. Just 279 compared to 2,871 for the African American. Now, the other largest categories for hate crimes include anti-Hispanic or Latinos. Now, they put them third, but they actually have 517 incidents. Okay? And anti-whites, there was a total of 869 hate incidents reported by the participating agencies in 2020. So that kind of gives us a basis of what we're talking about here, and why we say, or why I say, it seems like hate incidents or hate crimes towards Black Americans are, we've all accepted it, because as you can see, there's only been 279 incidents reported in 2020 for Asian Americans. Yet they started a law and they got millions of dollars worth of funding, and it became something that we're actually talking about today.
And we are going to benefit from, because they established a new lane on the highway. And it's not a new lane, but it's a lane that became relevant because of something. You know, we've often heard amongst those supremacists that say things like, you know, we wouldn't have a race problem if you stopped reporting race issues. I beg your pardon? Yeah, we would have no race problem if we did not keep statistics about the different things that happen to different people based on their race. And they're right.
Yeah, that's kind of like when Trump said,
Exactly.
There'd be less COVID if we didn't test for it, right?
That's right. And what we're pointing out is that now, if we read the statistics of hate incidents and hate crimes the year after, we'll find that there were more.
That's right.
Because I don't know if there were more hateful people doing more hateful things, but there were more hated people responding to those hateful things by reporting them. And by reporting them, we created attention, and that attention has created some resources and funding so that we can not only look at it, we can talk about it, we can report it, we can hopefully diminish the number of times that these things take place. We will hope that ultimately the reporting will be so strong that it will intimidate the action and stop people from being so braggadocious and aggressive with their hate.
What exactly is a hate crime? Now, what's the definition of a hate incident?
Well, a hate incident is a hostile expression or action that may be motivated by bias against another person's actual or perceived identities. Perpetrators may be motivated by different discriminatory bases, including, but not limited to, biases on the basis of race, color, disability, religion, national origin, sexual orientation, or gender, including gender identity. There are two main kinds of hate incidents: acts of hate that are not crimes but violate civil rights laws, and two, acts of hate that may not violate the law but still cause significant harm in a community. For a complete list of protected categories under California civil rights law, please go to the California Civil Rights Department, and that's available to you online. And we can talk about the hate crime a little bit later, but what we're saying here is things that people can do, and I initially said, well, it just make you feel bad. You know, in our experience, Michael, historically, when we were exposed to things that only made us feel bad, we were tending to be relieved, because the alternative to being made to feel bad was to be drugged behind a truck, hung, embarrassed, and beat up in front of your family and friends. And to escape that is a relief, but it creates that stress and mental problem that we're left with. Your comments on that, Michael?
Yeah, I think that the notion of the stress and the trauma from the incidents, we have been socialized to internalize that oppression to the point where we don't report them. And I'm surprised that we even reported 2,000 of them, even though, the Hispanic have 500, the Asian had 279, 300. We have internalized the oppression so much so that when we say International Underground Railroad Month, black folks won't have nothing to do with that. And by and large, say we don't know anything about it. But all of the locations, the hate crimes that happened in California, the statutes on the books of the state legislature, all of the things that we have endured in the state of California since 1850 is beyond the cognition of most people of African descent to even acknowledge what happened to us, how we survived. Yeah. So this month is very important to me as a historian, but it's also essential for future generations to know how we came and overcame the obstacles of systemic institutional racism as it relates to the laws of the state of California.
As we approach and understand more about our history, and I think it's very critical to do that, we don't want to sacrifice the impact of activities in responding to today's issues. It's as you point out, if it's a case for reparations based on the trauma that I've had to go through by simply being a black man, it's also a case for relief to discuss this and bring this to the table, because hate and racism is a nasty habit that we find many white people are trying to break. If that were not the case, there wouldn't have been no Underground Railroad, because the stations were not able to be put together by black folk. They were put together by non-black people. Our civil rights movement, our progress has been made as a result of relationships that we have been able to create outside of our race, outside of our ethnicity. That says something about the potential of all of us, not just of black folk, not just of white folk, but of what occurs when we decide to come together and acknowledge our oneness. Now, I've had some people kind of jokingly and sarcastically say, well, the help we're getting from white people these days is basically because those white people are actually black folk who were passing for white back in the 40s and just the new genetic. I said,
that just, people just are, not knowing. If you go back to Harriet Tubman, her mama called her Minty. If you go to, that is the headquarters for the Underground Railroad Network of Freedom for the World. And if you look at how she and John Brown, Reverend John Brown, worked together to arm insurrection, Harper's Ferry. And, it was his idea, the pastor's idea, that if we arm black folks and that they shot up and fought for their freedom on the battlefield, they'll be free. Now, that's exactly what happened, but it took the Civil War for that to happen. But so we have that angle to look at how race is mitigated, because sometimes it's going to take a gun. Sometimes it's going to take a lawsuit. But if people are put in jail, in this case, what's happening right now in front of everybody's face, people are being put in jail, being held accountable for an armed insurrection at the United States Capitol, right? So some people will say that's a hate crime, and other people will say it was an armed insurrection. Of course it was a hate crime.
Well, let me jump in this. This is real hot, brother. I'm so happy that you got on this program. It's great to meet you. I want to talk about that because I think I noticed, and I know a lot of people will be able to relate to this. We all saw that Riverfront, Alabama brawl, right?
Yes.
Now, if you talk to people after that incident, the black people will say it was a hate incident because the Caucasian people jumped on this senior citizen black man, the dock worker. But then if you talk to white Americans, they'll say that the black people were acting like a gang and it was a race fight. And, it was only a couple, they downplay it. I'll show you another example. Ron DeSantis is changing the laws in the schools in Florida to say that if you talk about any type of massacre that was committed by white citizens upon black Americans, you also have to talk about what the black people did, any violence that they may have committed that sparked the incident, as if it was their fault. So that's my question is, and I said it earlier, who defines what the incident is? Because you can have two different people look at the same incident and accuse each side of being hateful and doing a hate incident.
You could make that crowd even bigger. It could be 15 or 20 people, and each one of us have our own story. And history, as Michael will point out, is written generally by the people who are the so-called victors of whatever the issues were during that time. We're going to take a short break. This is Empire Talks Back. I'm Wallace Allen with Mr. Michael Harris, our historian from Sacramento, whose history does not limit itself to Sacramento, and Mac Rome, who is our Renaissance man representing the Inland Empire. I'm Wallace Allen. My mama's name is Ruth. We'll be right back.
Publish your legal notice in West Side Story newspaper. For the best service and the best rates, call 909-384-8131. Publishing legal notices in the city and county of San Bernardino since 1990. West Side Story provides friendly expert service. Call 909-384-8131 to benefit from budget-friendly rates. Whether a fictitious business name, a name change, a divorce summons, or any other legal or public notice, call West Side Story newspaper 909-384-8131. 909-384-8131. That's 909-384-8131.
Today's program is brought to you by the California Black Media Stop the Hate Project in conjunction with the California Civil Rights Department. People can report a hate incident by calling 833-866-4283. That's 833-86-4283. We're back. This is Empire Talks Back. I'm Wallace Allen. Man, we're on the case here. If Ron DeSantis wants to defend the feelings of young white children by keeping the truth away from them, what he's actually doing is stating the fact that trauma is still carried in the echo of the incidents that represent the true history of what America's building blocks consist of. Hate, you can't treat people less than human. You can't treat people like God had nothing to do with creating them without instilling a level of hate in order to accept the kind of treatment that you as a human being place on another. Hate is a terrible habit, but it is a habit. It's something that can be gotten rid of.
But we have a challenge here in America, though, because if you go back to the Constitution and the 3/5 clause, we only have representation for somebody else. It's not we're not human beings.
That's correct.
And then you fast forward to the emergency action that the enslaved man and a few sisters saved the Union in the Civil War, and it's like, oh, well, thank you, in 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment. But all of that went in the garbage can for another 100 years of Jim Crow. And so now we have a reworked Jim Crow. And the idea that, no, the crime didn't happen, the hate crime, and your response to the hate crime
Is a crime.
Is a crime. Exactly.
Yes.
And so we have in California a unique opportunity. But other folks, particularly where the soil in Montgomery, there was slavery, slave port. And in Florida, you have slavery, but you also have the indigenous people, beating the United States Army. So that there is pent-up frustration in the heart, soul, and mind of some Europeans that came over here and became Americans. They're never going to forget those things. It's in their DNA, just as in our DNA is of freedom fighters, individual and collectively. And that's why this month is exciting for me, because we get to share who helped us along the way, as conductors on the International Railroad.
You just spoke of the Seminole Indians without mentioning them. Would you, as a historian, give me a little bit more on how they defeated the military enough for the military to really decide to
invade Florida
and decide?
Well, they had to. Well, the beauty of it is you have to go back. This is Spain. This is part of Spain. This wasn't colonized by England. And you have the topography of Florida is such that you have swamps, you have alligators, you got big snakes, and the indigenous people and the African people, the original 100 black men that was dropped off by Diego Columbus, Christopher's son, they had a good relationship with the land. And so when the army went down there and fought them, they were defeated not only because people were coming out of trees, but the gators was getting them, the snakes was getting them. You went the wrong way, and now you got a sinkhole. So, and the United States Army declared victory and left. And so you have people of African descent and indigenous people free once again, while others are still enslaved and others, had to, be marched across the United States to Oklahoma. But people of African descent, indigenous people, stayed right where they were in Florida.
We're talking about the potential of government telling government to go jump in the lake. Before we talk about the River of Tears, we'd also have to go back and discuss another level of hate against the Cherokee Indians, who won a lawsuit in the Supreme Court, if I'm correct.
Yeah.
And the president of the United States at that time was
Andrew Jackson. I believe.
Andrew Jackson. And Andrew Jackson made a statement that really echoes now, in that he said, well, the Supreme Court made that decision that the Cherokees won, then let the Supreme Court enforce it. Then he proceeded to send them off on the Trail of Tears.
I want to underline something that you mentioned earlier, Michael, and it's something that I had to struggle with, especially since Trumpism and MAGA came around, and I began to speak to people, and I really try to understand how white Americans who don't like black Americans, I want to understand what generates that hate. And you touched on something earlier that was actually expressed to me by some people I was speaking with. There are people since the inception of this country who literally do not believe that black people are human beings. I mean, they literally do not believe that you are a human being. And the best way I can give this to you, I have a dog. He's a cane corso. And to see Barack Obama become president of the United States, to them, is the equivalent of my cane corso being trained and put into the White House.
All of that makes a lot of sense, but if I believe that all the way down to the bottom level, that means they are they're happy with animalism in terms of their sexual partners.
Oh my goodness.
Well, yeah.
I mean, if they
we're talking about a
consider,
small segment.
Yeah, we're
of-
only talking
of
about
their
the people who.
population, but
I'm
it's some
talking
of
about people who actually are racist.
yes, yeah, and
You know.
and that's what
Yes,
I'm talking
yes.
about. I'm talking
Yeah.
about, I'm talking about the same ones because they make they made babies that we could look at and say are babies, but we don't know what else they were practicing on.
Oh Lord, have mercy. But no, what y'all saying is absolutely true. And I had a,
Oh no, it's
real
important
good
for me
friend
to
of mine.
it's important for me to say this because
Okay, well, go ahead.
somebody's best friend may be an animalist.
I'm not touching that.
Well,
and that's exactly what their friends would say if they knew what their friend was doing. I'm not touching that.
Y'all. So in West Virginia, they have a church where the snakes bite you, and the more they bite you, these are poisonous rattlesnakes now, and they develop an immune system to that, and that's how to get closer to God is get bit by these snakes, right, until they die. But there is some people that are just going to have to die. Their beliefs in a mistranslated word of God, in fact, allows them to see people with eyes and ears and skin look just like them as non-human beings. We get that. It's a small percentage of them, but they got friends if they got money. If you work for one of them peoples, you're going to have to pretend that, you love dogs more than you love black folks.
Yeah.
That's just the way it is.
Man,
And
I'm
if you're
sorry.
black and work for them, you'll do the same thing.
Man, y'all people better pay attention to who you hire to walk your dog. That's all I'm saying. And I do appreciate Smokey Robinson because we do have to laugh to keep from crying.
Well, I mean, but the idea, if you go across the other side of the planet, dogs is just like a chicken, and it's on the menu.
Right.
But
Yeah,
here
well-
in America, because if you go back to 1788 in the Constitution, when it was ratified, and we're only talking about 13 states. We're not talking about the whole United States. We're just talking about 13 states that were colonies, so-called yearning for a greater measure of freedom, religious freedom, so-called. But the idea that you're not a human being in the Constitution, you're 3/5 of a human being.
And
And
we
the
know.
only reason why that changed is because you preserved the Union with a gun. Now, you got to marinate on that because that is so deep. And you think their values and their beliefs change just because you helped win a war? Oh, no.
Well, if that was the case, we would have had many opportunities for them to change because black folk in America are probably the only consistent or ethnic group that has consistently fought on America's side in every war that America has been in.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Now, we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, I want us to try to figure out and talk about how we, as men, deal with this problem on a daily basis with a futuristic look at solving it. We'll be right back.
We're on the move. Yeah.
Publish your legal notice in West Side Story newspaper. For the best service and the best rates, call 909-384-8131. Publishing legal notices in the city and county of San Bernardino since 1990. West Side Story provides friendly expert service. Call 909-384-8131 to benefit from budget-friendly rates. Whether a fictitious business name, a name change, a divorce summons, or any other legal or public notice, call West Side Story newspaper 909-384-8131. 909-384-8131. That's 909-384-8131.
Today's program is brought to you by the California Black Media Stop the Hate Project in conjunction with the California Civil Rights Department. People can report a hate incident by calling 833-866-4283. That's 833-866-4283. Don't marinate on it. Don't let it affect your life beyond the incident. Call 833-866-4283. Recognize and report hate incidents. This is Empire Talks Back. I'm Wallace Allen. I want to thank you, Michael, for your time. I want to thank you, Mac, for your time. And I want to thank our good friend who's so invisibly relevant. That's my friend Anthony Garcia, the Mood Master, who's brilliant bass playing and background, gives us a little wall to lean on. And Anthony, I really appreciate your artiste and the fact that you share it with us.
We're basking in the ambiance.
Yes. Yeah. He said something about something. It sounded like money, but I know he said honey. So we don't worry about that kind of stuff. What we do want to worry about is the fact that some people have not. How do you get along? How do you walk through a snake pit barefooted and not get bit? And we do that. We are able to manage a few little bites and keep walking as though we haven't been bitten. That causes a stress, a community stress, a community trauma. How do we deal with that? Because we've been dealing with it, but how do we deal with it and kind of straighten it out and reduce its impact? And what are we doing that makes our lives so happy despite the snake pit that we walk?
I'll take a whack at that, but I think that it's actually something that's changing. I think that it's human nature to adapt and fit into, precarious situations, and I think that's what Black Americans find themselves in America, is a precarious situation, or as you would call it, a den of snakes. And we're barefooted. We don't have boots to pull ourselves up by the straps with to walk through this snake pit. We just have to go through the snake pit.
But it's the best snake pit in the snake pit world.
Yeah, we should be thankful that we're in the American snake pit.
Yeah.
But I think that what we've done in the past is adapt, and some people, just like Michael mentioned earlier, if you work for somebody who's actually a racist, it's going to affect your behavior. But I think, especially today, I think Black people have a different attitude. I kind of think that may be why we don't show so much interest in the Underground Railroad Month as well, Michael. I think that Black people's attitude is becoming more and more like the group of people on the Alabama riverfront. I think that we don't want to run. We want to fight this time. These forces that are trying to make America go back 50, 60 years to when Black people were just out front, boldly second-class citizens, I don't think anybody is willing to run away from that fight no more. I think Black people are willing to jump in the water and swim to the fight.
Okay. Now, as we go back and look at that fight real quick, I want us to point out that there was, and I noticed it because I saw a white man hitting another white man. And the third or fourth time I looked at this, I realized that the white man that was being hit was trying to protect the Black man that was being beat up.
Because he was also a riverboat employee.
He was a number of so we have that association, and I don't want to forget that the consistency of Black maltreatment is amazing, but the growth of white people who are willing to fight against it is just as amazing. So as I see the growth, the change, it isn't so much that Black people are now forced to fight more. I think the decision is more with white people as to
pushing the issue and trying to go back.
Pushing the issue. There are those who want to go forward, who are wanting to break this bad habit of smoking in bed with the alcohol on and the gas burning and the planet going bad. They see all of these things as a reflection of this superiority attitude that simply that it's not just superior to Black people. I understand now that when white ministers, when they talk to their congregation about the attitude of Jesus, the idea of compassion, the idea of helping and being concerned about the poor and the hungry, that their church members now are saying, whoa, wait a minute.
Jesus was a snowflake.
Yeah, Jesus was woke. We ain't trying to be woke.
But okay, so this is a blessed time to be living and see it and experience it, because all of the efforts to destroy the ancient African spirit and people of African descent here in America, they see that hasn't worked. So tomorrow is Labor Day, and we worked 270 years labor for free. And folks saying, nah, well, yeah, that happened, but, y'all ain't made a good case to get no payment for that. So that's, we can set that aside. That's going to happen. But what we need to do individually is no different than what happened yesterday on the football field. The Colorado Bull.
Go Dion!
They vibrated higher, and they won. They run a track meet on a football field, right? Because they believed in themselves. Their spirit vibrated higher. And what happens? You have all the transfer of wealth in Colorado on the football field. Team won one game last year. They won one game yesterday. And the money you're going to see it next week. Nebraska is going to be in a big old pit in Colorado, and it's going to be a track meet. But the idea that those boys, Dion's got them vibrating higher. Their spirit is believing in one another as a team. That is what people of African descent, black folks in America, must do. We must vibrate higher. We must transfer the wealth amongst ourselves. If we get some wealth that should have been ours all along through reparations, that's good.
Oh.
But if we vibrate higher right now today together, we'll be just fine.
We've done that. And that is the secret ingredient of soul. And you've brought it out. And that is the attraction that the world has for black people, based on your ability to stand in the snake pit, get bit, and glory in it. We have set an example of how you can get along despite. What we would like to do is continue setting that example and get along because others are willing. I think our effort needs to be spread around. I think we need to step out and bring with us everything that we have as we step out and speak to those people that are in question. Speak to those people who are in doubt. Speak to those people and let them know that, we can help you get to heaven. And we ain't talking about killing you, but we are talking about helping you get rid of that bad habit of hate. We are talking about allowing you to step into the light.
Yes.
And understand that we are New Testament people. We're not Old Testament, cut your hand off because you did something wrong. We are New Testament Jesus kind of folk that say, we can forgive if you can. If you can forgive yourself, we can forgive you. But we got to we've got to admit what needs to be forgiven.
Right.
So once again, I appreciate you. I appreciate the fact that I was able to meet you, Mr. Michael Harris, and I appreciate the fact that you were able to introduce me to some people. I haven't got an official title for you. I mean, I said historian, I said adventurer, I mean social manipulator. I think lie detector is a great one. We all want to step into that realm. But as we detect the lies, do we call them a liar or do we simply lead them to the truth? That becomes a question. I appreciate you guys. Love you very much. Hope you will stick around and see us next Sunday. Under two circumstances, we'll be here. One, if the good Lord's willing. Two, if the creek don't rise. Mac Rome, thank you.
Thank you very much, my brother IE. We are out. We love you, and we'll see you again first Sunday of next month. I'll be here.
I know we've got a long way.
KCAA Loma Linda. The Legacy KCAA